Hey, welcome to the Uncommon Life podcast, the show where Lewis, Rich and myself delve into topics that are helping us build towards being in the best shape and health of our lives. It's fair to say that we're quite far into that journey. That said, we're changing our minds on various topics as we learn more about ourselves, and there's also some things that we each find uniquely challenging. Our hope is that you can relate to some of our journeys and challenges, and that you find it inspiring and useful as you build towards being in the best shape and health of your life. Okay, today's episode. Rich is off on his holidays, so it's just me and Lewis this week. And we decided to use the episode to talk about our recent DEXA scans. So what is a DEXA scan? Well, it's a body composition test, and it's generally regarded as the best way to measure body fat and your overall body composition. So that's an accurate and precise measurement of body fat, lean mass and bone. Both Lewis and I learned some new things about ourselves from our DEXA scans. And it also helps us have some ideas of adjustments we might make over the coming months. So we're excited to share those with you. All right, let's jump in. Alrighty, DEXA scan episode. So we don't have Rich this week. He's on holiday enjoying the sun and pina coladas and stuff like that, and hopefully getting fat.
No doubt.
What we thought we'd do is we'd take the opportunity because me and Lewis had a DEXA scan done recently, and we had a bit of banter on the WhatsApp group as well about kind of just comparing some results. But we thought it'd be good just to kind of do an episode on our results and compare and also, I think we both learned a couple of things, and we've both got some thoughts about how that might change some of our behaviours over the next few months. So we'll have a chat about that too.
Definitely. Yeah.
All right. Let me get something loaded up. What one do I want to load up first? Yeah, let's do that one.
So for anyone listening to this podcast, I think we'll probably recommend that it's one of those that are better viewed via video, because we are going to be sharing our own DEXA scans with all the results. We'll be talking through the different metrics and hopefully being able to just try and simplify the huge amount of data points that there are in there, so that if anyone is keen to do their own DEXA scan, they can use this as a bit of a guide as to what to look for and what might help. So definitely recommend it on video.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll do our best to compensate and tell people the numbers and stuff like that as well, so that if you are listening, then hopefully it should just about be okay. But I think probably the first thing, and actually I reckon one of the reasons most people get a DEXA scan is to find out their body fat percentage, right? There's a whole bunch of other kind of cool things, but let's face it, the most sexiest and most talked about kind of metric is body fat, right?
Yeah.
This is where you goddamn rule. If you look at these two charts, you can see that you came in sub 10%, which is insane, by the way. I don't know how many people sit and can just live. I'm looking, actually, I've got a helpful graph here that says in terms of body fat. But yeah, I mean, that puts you, how old are you?
41.
Yeah, 41. So look, you're in a top 10% for body fat if you're 13.3 in terms of the age group 40 to 49. So you are just probably top 3 to 5% pretty easy.
Mate, I'd correct you slightly on there. If we're looking at the same one, yeah, it's actually top 1 percentile. Yeah, so top 1 percentile is
exactly.
13.3. So yeah, under 10%.
Oh yes, you're right. Yeah, because top 10%. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realise that. Yeah. God damn it, top 1%. That's just incredible.
Thank you, mate. It's a fair bit. Everyone has kind of heard the focus and consistency on training and diet, and I think it just kind of comes through if you're pretty consistent. So that's pretty much it. So what I would say, I think it'd be useful to kick off why we did this before we kind of dive into the figures. So I think the reason, so we spoke about it in a podcast a little while ago, and I was about to, so in October, so last month, it was my birthday. So I turned 41. And before that, so you and I both listened to Dr. Peter Attia quite a bit, his podcast, The Drive, which is awesome. And he's mentioned the importance of completing DEXA scans for his patients. And I think both you and I heard that and we were like, that's super interesting. I hadn't thought of doing a DEXA scan for anything other than just looking at your total body fat percentage.
Yeah.
But when he spoke about it, he mentioned the other really important metric, actually the more important metrics that you can actually look at, which are also, so visceral fat, which is something that you wouldn't be able to find out elsewhere. And that tells you the amount of fat that you have around your organs. And if that is high, it's a really good indicator for like cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, a number of other like horrible things. And I mean, if you want to expand on like the visceral fat piece as well, you kind of, so there was visceral fat, and then there was lean body mass. So how much muscle tissue your body actually holds. And the final one was bone mineral density. And he's always talking about longevity, right? So how can we live our healthiest, longest lives? You and I are both 100% committed into that. And we've spoken about it before, what our goals are. And just something that I would love to do in like 15 years time is be able to possibly play, a competitive sport with my 3 kids. So I want to stay as fit and healthy as I can to be able to keep up with them in 15 years, 20 years time, to be actually be able to compete and like do a decent job with them. So him mentioning those really key metrics that you could get from a DEXA scan really made me think that's such a good idea. I haven't thought of that. And then I thought it was just he mentions that he gets his clients to do it on a regular basis. And I was like, I'm just going to do this before my birthday every year. Yeah. And last month went and got my DEXA scan, and I think you did yours recently as well. I think very similarly because you've just had your birthday, right?
Yep. Well, no, it's coming up.
Oh, it's coming up. So
week time. Yeah.
And that was the reason why we've done it. So it's why did we want to do it? We want to make sure that we're on track for the future. And if there are any indicators or anything that's showing up that doesn't seem quite right, taking certain precautions to be able to kind of put it in the right direction. So that's just a bit more background as to why we did it.
Yeah, by the way, exactly the same for me. I'll link to a couple of really great blog posts by Body Scan UK, which is the company that I got a DEXA scan from, because they really break down those key metrics and point towards where Peter Attia talks about them. But when I've always known DEXA scan is probably the most reliable way of being able to get a body fat like reading, but only kind of from listening to Peter Attia talk more did I really realize that, like, the visceral fat, the bone density, the lean muscle, like these are super important metrics for longevity. Like when you're older, like everybody knows that the more lean muscle you have and the higher bone density muscle you have, the much less likely you are to fall. And if you are to fall, the much less likely you are to have damage, right? And the visceral fat is super important for disease and things like that as well. So as I got more into it, I'm like, this is a fantastic like health and longevity marker to take X period of time. And like for me, I think I'm just going to do it around my birthday every single year just to kind of capture where I'm at.
And so that's why we've done it. I think it's also probably important to note, you and I were not medical professionals. Like, we don't know this stuff inside out. We're not doctors. Yeah. We're just trying to, be the best versions of ourselves. And we're just trying to figure this stuff out, which can be really quite complicated as well, and simplify it to ourselves and think, how can we use this? What can we do? And on the back of this, I think once we go through the data that we've had and some of the metrics, there's something that was really useful for me, which I was absolutely unaware of, which we'll kind of get to. And I've been able to make some differences myself. So there's always something that we can pick up from it.
Yeah, cool.
But so you were just telling me how awesome I am because of my body fat percentage. Should we get back to that?
And again, like you very, very rightly corrected me. I'm just looking on my sheet now because I didn't realize that the far left column is the 1%. It goes 1% and then 10, 20, 30, 40. And if you're sub 12.4, sorry, if you're sub 13.3, you're in the 1%, which again, 9.8% is insanely lean. Did you think, was that roughly where you expected to be?
No, I actually thought it'd be a bit higher than that. If I'm honest, I thought it was about 11 or 12%.
Right.
So I was surprised that it came in under 10%, but I'll take it. It's quite a nice
Yeah.
thing to be under 10%. But it's like one of those, it just sounds cool. It doesn't really mean anything because if the
No,
other
it
metrics
doesn't.
aren't any good, then it's kind of like, what does it matter? It's more of a vanity piece. But I think it is important if we think of the overall body fat percentage. I mean, where did you come in at? What was
So
yours?
I came in at 15.4, which
Yeah,
for my age puts me. It definitely puts me in the top 10%. Because if you're
yeah.
sub 17, you're in top 10%. But it didn't get me into the top 1%, which again I wasn't expecting. I thought that I would be around 15%. I've never measured my body fat ever before, other than those crappy kind of like electric kind of machines you get sometimes when you do a test, which are just horribly inaccurate. So I've never kind of really taken stock of those. But yeah, I expected to be about 15%. So 15.4, I was happy with, and in the, like it's. I think sometimes like I used to think 15% is not very lean. But actually, if you look into it and you look at pictures of people at, say, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, you realize that 15% is basically, you can usually see four abs. They're not like crystally clear, like defined or anything like that. But look, you look lean, and you can usually see four abs with a tense. And again, that's what I've always gauged as what I wanted to be. And I always thought that equated to about 15%. So I didn't really learn anything new from that. And like you said, I don't. It's probably the least important of all of the metrics from the
Yeah.
DEXA scan that I got. But it was nice to see it at 15%. I just want to maintain that. And I thought that you
So
would be 10. I thought you would be about 10.
okay.
Interesting.
I think something else to probably note on it though is to have a body fat percentage overall that's relatively low does take hard work and discipline. Like we talk about this, and it's very much part of our. It doesn't just happen. So to have a body fat percentage of probably under 17%, well, takes hard work. To be honest, you
Yep.
got to be fairly disciplined to be able to do that. So there's got to be a real conscious effort for it. So kind of doesn't just happen.
Yep. Did What was probably more interesting is, did you get any insights in terms of where your body tends to store fat? Because the guy who I went to see at Body Scan UK, like a bit of a shout out. He was really good. Like he was super jacked. He was well into what he was doing, and he knew everything. And he explained everything in such a perfect way to me. But the one thing he talked about was the fact that men and women store fat differently. Right, men tend to store it around a little bit in the chest, but also through into the abs and the tummy. Women tend to store it around their hips, etc. So you tend to usually get a different proportion of how fat's laid out between men and women. But interestingly, like I was shown like that I hold fat around the legs more than perhaps like you would find for a male. So I thought that was. I mean, I don't think there's anything that you can really do about where you store fat. Like a lot of it is like whether you're a male or female, and some of it has down to genetics. But I thought it was interesting that he mentioned that I kind of stored quite a bit of fat around my legs.
Yeah, no, he didn't really go into the detail for me because I think because mine was like, it was like, hold on, mate, keep it up, whatever you're doing seems to be working, and that's pretty much it. So
Yeah,
although
well, I would
he
say the
was
same if I
jacked
saw
as
someone
well.
at 10% too.
So he was jacked as well. So maybe if like you do these, but I think if we look at the figures there though, so you've got yours. So is it the percent body fat's 15.6% left leg? Is that right?
Yeah,
15.2% fat left leg, and then 14, 15. Yeah, mine was all pretty even as well.
mm.
Mine was all right leg. My legs were slightly more but everything was super close. So I don't think there was any, I don't think it was really
Yeah, there was
stored in
nothing I
particular
can. I mean,
anyway.
and again, I don't think there's a lot of actionable insights from that sort of data anyway. Um,
Just interesting to know
yeah.
if you want to. Yeah.
What is actually probably more interesting is the visceral fat.
Yeah.
Which again, I was really, that was one of the things I was most interested to see. Because again, body fat is what you can see on the outside. Visceral fat tends to build up like within your organs. And again, you can get some people that don't look gigantic or massively obese on the outside, but because of their lifestyle, can be building up visceral fat on the inside, and it could be like an indicator of problems down the road. So where was your visceral fat at?
So mine is on the right, and it's the one I've highlighted. So it's 44.9. centimeters squared.
And mine looks like it was very close to yours. So mine was 45.8. So
so very
close.
similar, super similar, pretty much exactly the same.
And he said that if you're sub 47, you're top 10% for visceral fat. If you can get into, you have to be sub 33 to be top 1%. So he basically said, look, your visceral fat is great. You're top 10% for your age.
That's perfect. Yeah.
And I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, me too. And I think just to kind of share, so what is good, or the normal range, is under 100. Right. And so that's what, so under 100 is normal. Anything between 100 and 150 is slightly higher risk. And then anything over 150 is danger. And this is for cardiovascular disease. I think, I forget what it was, but I think we'll probably share it in some of the other paper. But it's all the bad stuff, basically. So type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular, heart disease, all that kind of bad stuff. So under 100 is normal. You and I were both 45. So whatever we're doing diet-wise, exercise-wise, it's more of the same.
Yeah, I think so. The reason I just brought up this one here is he didn't really talk about the 100 number to me, but you can kind of see here that for the ages of 40 to 49, so what you're looking at is in the top half of the screen, and then the bottom left of the top half of the screen, the estimated fat, which is the visceral fat. You can see he marked where I was, which is right on the edge of the 10%, like the better part of the 10%.
So second row up from the top page. So under estimated VAT visceral.
Yeah, you can see that he highlighted the 47 because I was about 45. So you can see there, like that's actually, so it's kind of top 10%. But you can see there, if I was 100, I'd be in the 60 to 70, which, hey, like is probably normal-ish, right? And again, a lot of it does depend on your age. If, for example, you're 18 to 29, then really 100 is pretty bad because you would be in the bottom 10% for your age. So this one kind of puts it into a bit more perspective around your age. But hey, like to be top 10% for my age, I'm entirely happy about that. And again, he was the same, like keep doing what you're doing. You're obviously training and eating right. And the one thing he said as well is that you usually find that visceral fat follows body fat. He's like, you don't see too many people that are very lean and have a high amount of visceral fat, like, because actually just being lean usually follows a healthy lifestyle. So he said it's not surprising to see that, you're in the top 10% for visceral fat because you're in the top 10% for body fat. Same goes for you as well. You wouldn't expect to have a high amount of visceral fat because your body fat is incredibly low.
There are a lot of, I think, genetic differences though that can happen here, or it's like lots of personal differences where people store fat. People's ability to store fat is very different and varies.
Yep.
So some people will be able to increase their fat stores in their via fat stores, which you can physically see, that won't necessarily seep into their organs. So some people may just get larger and have higher body fat percentage. But where the danger comes is if your body doesn't physically, I guess, store that fat as fat cells and actually start storing it within the organs, that's when it leads to more danger in the future.
Yep.
So visceral fat, I think
it sounds like we're
it.
pretty much in the same place with that top 10% and pretty good following our body fat markers. So the next one was let's go bone density, because this was an interesting one for you. Let me find the right tab to share here.
So whilst you're looking for that, so if we talk about bone mineral density, so I think you said it at the very beginning. The reason why you'd want that, it tells you how solid your bones are. And again, if we're looking at longevity, living for a long time, there are lots of stats and figures that show that the leading cause of death for people in their over 60 is falls and breaks. So having stronger bones and bone density means that you're more likely to survive a fall without a break. So it's important to have those stronger bones. Would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find a stat from. Just give me one sec.
So if anyone's looking on the screen, so you've got Daniel's is on the left, mine's on the right. And so go on.
Yeah, so like this is really interesting. Really interesting. Let me share this one actually. Because I think for me, it's the easiest way I can think about the bone density stuff. So again, here you can see, like, if you're over the age of 65 and you fall and you break your hip, there's a 30-40% chance you'll be dead in 12 months. That's insane.
That is insane.
Like,
I was 65.
And I hear that quote from quite a lot of people. And again, the reason for that is, breaking a bone like your hip over the age of 65, it just sends you down a path of not being mobile and not being active. And it just becomes a spiral. And then all sorts of other things happen when you can't maintain that sort of mobility and that sort of activity, and you end up in hospital and you catch things, and it could just be, it's just super risky. Now, having high bone density doesn't necessarily mean that you can avoid a fall or breaking your hip, but it does reduce the chances of whether you actually break something if you fall. And again, I imagine that once you've broken something, it probably helps you recover as well. But this is the reason that Peter Attia bangs on about the bone density stuff as well, because what it does is it makes you less fragile as you get older.
Yeah, which is why it's one of the, and it's such something I never would have thought to actually assess and check out. And having done this now, this was super insightful for me in particular. So I'll just talk about, I'll jump in and talk about my results there.
Yeah.
So this one here. So what helps improve bone mineral density is strength training, is the number one thing to try and improve the density of your bones, which I do a lot of. And I've exercised pretty frequently for the past 20 years, as I mentioned before. So I came into this thinking my bone mineral density is going to be like optimal. It's going to be way better than normal or average. And my result came back and I was actually really surprised by it. So I've kind of written some notes on there. So anything above 1, so 1 or above is normal, but the higher, the better with it. And my score came in at 1.065, which is just over the 1. And I was really quite surprised about that. So when I had my results and discussed it with my guy, he said to me, so you do a lot of exercise clearly. And I mean, we haven't spoken about lean body mass yet. So he's like, you got a decent bit of muscle on you, but he said, what's your diet like? And I eat a lot of meat, eggs, fruit, veg.
Carnivore-ish, right?
Carnivore-ish, yeah. So carnivore-ish, with the odd weekend treat here and there, more often than not.
Is this like a spoiler alert? You're going vegan?
Yeah, no. But something I haven't been having for the last 5 years is dairy. And what really helps with bones is calcium. And he said to me, what's your calcium intake like? And I said, I really don't have any, to be honest. I'll have some cheese occasionally, but I don't drink milk. I haven't been drinking milk. I haven't been having yogurts. And it was more of a health conscious decision, because for some reason I'm not even lactose intolerant in any way, but I just ended up going down a rabbit hole of reading a whole bunch of stuff, and it was like, dairy's not good for you. And I was like, okay, I can do without it. But actually I think that's so calcium's one, and then vitamin D as well. So living here in Australia, which is pretty sunny, I would have thought I'd get a bit of vitamin D, but I'd need to test out my vitamin D levels. But I'm pretty certain it's because of the last 5 years I haven't been eating enough dairy. So for me, this was just so worthwhile doing, because it's such a simple change that I can do to potentially improve my longevity and my health in the future, which is just have more dairy. And that's pretty much what I'm going to do. So I've started taking my vitamin D supplements as well, being a bit more conscientious with that. And I'm going to keep everything the same. And when I test it again in 12 months' time, I'll be really interested to see whether it's made a difference. So, yeah, that was my real interesting one for me.
Let me share it.
Because I thought it would be optimal. I thought it'd be really high because of the amount of strength training I do. I was like, that's crazy. Just like normal.
I was surprised it was really low. And again, like I'm going to go back to the age ones as well because
this one's shocking when you look at that.
Yeah, when you look at it, like your bottom 1%, but don't know what were you
1%. Yeah, I'm
so you're in the bottom 1%. It's actually lower now that I look at it based on age and look at it based on this chart. I didn't realize how low it was. So again, on this chart, the top kind of half of this whole kind of thing, you want it to be towards the left side. You want low body fat, you want low visceral fat, and then on the bottom half, you want everything to be to the right-hand side because you want to be top for lean muscle and bone density, etc. You can see mine. I came in at, what was my actual number actually? My
1.3 something
was. These graphs. Man, why can't I? Here we go. I was 1.324. So again, 1.324 puts me about, top 80%. So I was pretty happy with that, and he was pretty happy with it. But yeah, now that I look at yours for the 40 to 49, you're right to the left. So it's going to be interesting. Like that's a great opportunity for you to kind of know that, right? Because if you bring calcium in, look at your vitamin D, it'd be interesting to see whether that starts to shift things to the right for you.
Yeah, I have no doubt it will. And it then also got me thinking. So this time last year, when I think I've kind of mentioned it before, I went for a run and I was running like full pelt on concrete and I fell and I ended up breaking like a bone in my hand. Right. Maybe I wouldn't have broken that bone if my bone mineral density was higher. And, that slight little crack. So it's these little things that just make a difference. And the only thing I can think of is I haven't been eating dairy and not getting enough calcium in my diet, which I think is just like really insightful. So, and it's such a simple fix. So I love cottage cheese. I love it. I love dairy. I don't have any issues with it. I just stopped doing it because I thought it was better for my health. And turns out I'm gonna stick to the dairy.
Wow. Full fat Greek yogurt is my favorite kind of sweet tooth healthy food, really. So
full fat Greek yogurt, some mixed berries, bit of honey. Yummo.
I love this website. Yeah, this like searches all of Huberman's and other smart people's podcasts, and I was just looking to see what you can do to improve bone density. And again, he mostly talks about resistance training, which is why I was so surprised for you, because for the most part, people that have low bone density, you would usually find that like for example, the guy that I spoke to, he said just before me they had a runner, and he didn't do any resistance training, and he was just like a runner, and he was relatively lean, but he had very low bone density, and one of the part of the conversation he had with him was to bring resistance training in. But I mean, like, you train resistance training like every day. So I was like, I was pretty surprised to see that. I'd be interested to see whether the calcium and the vitamin D works. It might be worth also just kind of doing a bit more extensive research about things you can do to improve that and see whether there's anything else as well.
Yeah, I've had a look. Like, so I was all over it. So strength training, protein intake needs to be high. Check. Sleep, sufficient sleep, calcium. Yeah. What else was it? There was, and then there was like cardio. Like, it helps because that helps your endurance fitness. But I think it's those key things. But like resistance exercise, I do it. Protein intake is always super high anyway. Calcium, pretty much non-existent. Vitamin D, bits and pieces. So, I'll be really interested to. We'll do another session in a year's time after I've done it. I might do it. I'm probably going to get one in like 6 months, 7 months anyway. Just kind of see. I don't know how quickly you can move the dial on it though. I'll be interested to see. But
Yeah,
yeah, so
I don't know
worthwhile
either. Also,
doing.
worth getting a vitamin D test as well, just like a unique vitamin D. Just like just getting your vitamin D tested, you should be able to get it done by just like a finger prick,
Mm,
and get it really quick. So like if that comes in as low, that's a good thing not to have low anyway for reasons beyond just bone density.
mm.
So yeah, it might be worth looking into that too. And also vitamin D is one of the cheapest things to supplement with. You can literally get like a year supply for like 20 or $30, little drops that you just put in the drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an easy one. All right. Next on the list, let's look at LMI, which I suspect you're going to be able to make a comeback with. Now I'm just trying to look on the comparison things where the LMI one is.
So it's the
This is the bit that I get confused about.
first page that we had the fat on. Lean indices.
Right,
Bottom
okay.
right box. Yeah.
Lean indices, which should be this one. So this is your LMI, yeah?
Yeah. LMI. So your one. So if we're looking at the video, the bottom right box that says lean indices is where it tells us, and there are two different measures that you can look at. So one is called lean height, and that tells you the total lean mass, so muscle basically in your whole body, but that includes organs and everything else. And then the one just below it, which is APN, lean height. So that tells you just your limbs only, so arms and legs. And I think when we're looking at lean muscle, I think so Peter Attia kind of mentions looking at the one that's limbs only, because that gives a bit more of an accurate reflection on the actual muscle mass and doesn't include organs as much. So that was the one that I was looking at. So it's the one that is highlighted on the right hand side. 9.48. Yeah.
And I am 8.93. Interestingly, the guy that talked about my results, and he said like, some of the DEXA scans differ in terms of exactly what they spit out. He focused more on the upper number for me, like the 18.9 number.
I think we can look at both. So I think let's look at the upper number as well, because that's on the tables and the graphs that you've got. Whereas the
let me bring that
height
one up as well.
isn't actually on there. So it's got lean trunk, lean arms, lean legs, but it doesn't give you the combined one. But the LMI on here, yeah. So we've got LMI second page, top rows. So is yours the circle? What did your
so mine was 18.91, which puts me somewhere about in the middle. It puts me. I literally just creeped into the 50th percentile, which of course, like the absolute best would be towards the right of the page. So, and then you were, what number were you?
20.1.
20.1. So you were very close to sneaking into the 70. You'd be 20.4. You need to get into the 70 percentile. Right. That's pretty good, by the way. Like Peter Attia talks about the fact that the gold standard is he wants to see all of his patients in the top 25% for their age, and you're really, really close to that. Like the top 20% would be 20.8 or something. And what were you again?
20.1.
Yeah, so you're really close to being at the top 25%. That's it. That is really, really good. Which again, I would have expected you to, given your height and like what you can see from kind of your physique and that you're very lean, I suspected that you would have you would score pretty good on lean muscle.
Yeah, which is why really I think good. So when we look at the bone mineral density piece as well, it's like, so I'm doing the weight training. I've got a decent bit of muscle mass, but actually from the diet and the lack of potentially calcium, which I'm really putting on, my bones haven't aren't optimized at all. So I'm having enough protein to gain lean mass and doing enough exercise for the muscle, but not necessarily for the bone. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens over the next 12 months. But I was happy-ish with that. But I think that's a good one for improvement. I think that's something you're focusing on as well now, though, isn't it? Focusing on more on lean mass and
Yeah.
putting a bit of meat on the bones as opposed to trying to trim down.
Yeah, it was absolutely the most useful thing out of the DEXA scan for me, because I've been through a journey of cutting and getting lean. I have no idea what my body fat was before. I haven't even sat down to sort of even make a rough estimate of the calculations, but I was definitely 20% plus when I started this journey. And based on where I am now, I'm around the middle, so I've got some work to do to kind of get up to the top 25%. And that was the most interesting part of the conversation with the guy, actually, because he said, well, let's look at things. Let's work out how much lean muscle it would take to get you from where you are, which is 18.9 or whatever, to top 25%, which again is going to be more like 20.8. And he did a little calculation. It's like you would need to put on 6 kilograms of lean muscle to get into the top 25%.
Are you serious?
Interesting. Yeah, so that's really interesting for me to know, right? Because it gives me a sense of really like how far I am, like 20.8, 90. Who knows what to do with that, right? But when someone tells you in cold numbers, you need to put on 6, and that's not 6 kilograms of weight. That's lean muscle. And that was another interesting thing. He was like, people don't generally put on lean muscle. When you put on weight, you put on a mixture of muscle and a mixture of fat. And he was actually saying the gold standard is usually around a 1-to-1. So, therefore to put on 6 kilograms of muscle, I might have to put on 12 kilograms of weight, right? And there's plenty of other people manage to kind of do some body recomp, etc. And, they end up putting on like 2-for-1 or whatever. But obviously the main thing is that you actually put on more lean muscle is so important for that longevity piece. So look, my goals right now are absolutely lean muscle. I'm eating at my maintenance calories, hoping for some recomp. And at some point, I'm going to shift into a very slow and small surplus. And I have a long time horizon just to kind of incrementally add lean muscle at as good a ratio of muscle to fat as I possibly can. And that's why a retest is going to be so important, because if I come back next year and I can see that I put on 4 kilograms and 3 kilograms of it was lean muscle and 1 kilogram was fat, then, obviously I'm going to be incredibly happy. And by the way, I think that I'm positioned to get the gold standard of ratio from muscle to fat, because I'm incredibly meticulous about my calories. I know my maintenance. I'm pretty sure I have like the tools and the knowledge now to change my my body shape. It's just a matter of being consistent with it. So, again, I'm not guessing about whether I'm being in a surplus or a deficit or anything like that. I know how to get into a 300 calorie surplus. And if I do it, I see no reason why I can't build relatively lean muscle and not put on too much fat. But 6 kilograms lean muscle, that's the long-term goal. And I guess I'm just going to have a real crack at it next year and go back, get another DEXA scan on my birthday, and we'll see where things sit.
Yeah, that's 6 kilos. That's a lot. I wonder, I'm keen to find out how he's done the maths on that. Because if I'm looking at mine, if I wanted to up it a bit, so if I guess I'm just like, I'd have to gain maybe say another 2 kilos, possibly, and I'll be in the 75th, 80th.
No,
3 kilos.
Near that, I wouldn't have thought. You're pretty close there already.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe I'll sit down and do it. I can't remember how he did the maths, but it's pretty simple, right? He just looked at my body fat, lean muscle versus fat, and just worked out what does it take to get that number to 20.8 or whatever it was. And he was like, if you add 6 kilograms, if you were walking in here and the DEXA scan had said 6 kilograms more lean muscle and no more body fat, you would be showing 20.8 and you would be in the top 25%.
Maybe that's one for ChatGPT.
I didn't question it or try and understand the calculation. And actually, it doesn't matter, right? 6 kilograms, 5 kilograms, 4 kilograms, it doesn't matter. Next time I go and get a DEXA scan, I want my LMI score to be moving to the right, and if it does, I'm in good shape.
Yeah. So I think this was super helpful. And actually, there was just one last slide that I wanted to share, which was
Okay.
I think the comparison that I had. So I actually did a DEXA 6 years ago, and this is where I
I
think
didn't know that.
the value in this really is. So I did a DEXA scan 6 years ago because I did a university study where they were studying the impact of a ketogenic diet on muscle growth and fat loss. So I did a strict ketogenic diet for 3 months. I had a DEXA scan at the beginning, a DEXA scan at the end, and then I did a 3 month high carb diet as well. And then they tested me after that. The only DEXA scan result that I've got is actually the baseline one, which was before I even started any of it, which I think is probably the best one to have.
Wow, I
And
didn't know
I
you had
checked out
that.
some of my figures, and it was on there. And for me, it was quite interesting because
Was that on your notes thing
on
that you sent over?
yeah, it's on my notes. If you could share
Yeah, let me
that.
load that up.
And I think this is where it's important for everyone because I mean everyone's going to be in a different place, but I think if everyone could just kind of look at those three key measures of the visceral fat, moving that in the right direction, so less than 100. You've got the lean mass index, so moving it towards, I guess, the 70th percentile. And we've got the numbers there that we've kind of given, heading towards like the 21-ish range. And then there was also the bone mineral density as well, like moving that, I guess, in the high, was it 1.2s, 1.3s, or pushing it up that way. So what we've got here is I've got so numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. So for anyone that doesn't have video, apologies, because this would be shit, but I'll just try and explain it. So the results are on the top row for so it was Jan 2017 when I was 34, and then this one now, which is October 2023 when I'm 40. So 6 years later. And I quite like this. So nice to look back at it. And I'm a bit of a geek with this kind of stuff. So my body fat percent was 12.1%. So when I was 34, so I was still pretty lean. But I've lost 2.5% body fat since then over the last 6 years. If we look across, so visceral fat wasn't measured on it, or I couldn't find it. We've got the lean mass number. So we'll stick to the number that we've looked at, which is the 20.1. So 6 years ago, it was 19.4. So I've increased by 0.7. So if I think 19.4 when I was mid 30s, that put me in the 55th percentile. So that's actually gotten
Yeah.
better
I was
over the
about to
last six
say, like, that
years.
doesn't sound like
A
a
lot
big
better.
jump, but when you look at it on the sheet, you've jumped potentially like 2 columns nearly.
Yeah.
It's really
So that
good.
is actually pretty. Yeah, because the numbers are tiny, aren't they? The jumps are tiny.
Yeah.
So that is good to see. And then the bone mineral, interestingly, so it was 1.0 and it's gone up to 1.06. So it was even low then 6 years ago. And that was on the
That's only jumping a 10% in general anyway.
yeah,
So
but so I
that's
think that's
not too
probably
much of a
much the
shift.
same. So, and I think I'd done like I don't know what kind of whether would have been having a huge amount of calcium back then. I don't think I would have been. So, but yeah, I think this is the power of doing it consistently. You can track those key measurements and just see kind of tweak accordingly your training and diet and other bits and pieces.
Yeah, exactly. The guy that I went to see was trying to persuade me to get it done more regularly than I was thinking. And look, I think it does make sense. I think he wants me in buying more DEXA scans as well. But it sort of does make sense because I was just thinking I'll take one in a year's time. But the one thing he said is if your goal is to basically eat at maintenance between now and January and aim for some recomp, and then from January onwards go into a surplus and try and gain lean muscle, is you should probably come in here January, get one done, and actually know for real what body recomp happened, because he said you will know for real. That said, I'm not really sure that I care that much, because I'm not really hoping for a whole load of recomp. I see between now and January just getting into the discipline of being able to eat clean, eat 80% whole foods, and just stick to my maintenance weight, because I've spent so long in a deficit trying to cut. So I just want a breather from and I don't want to jump straight to surplus. I want to kind of tread water for a little bit and just really dial in my discipline. And then it's really from January that I'll let loose and go into a bit of a surplus. So I'm not actually that bothered to know what the recomp happens, but but with 6 months of lean muscle, I'm going to run from January through to May at a surplus, and then I'm going to run from May till June or July at maintenance, just to kind of like tighten up a little bit for the summer. And then I think at the end of the summer, as I cruise into my 46th birthday, I'll just want to take a snapshot at that point and just see where things sit.
There's a fine balance as well, though, isn't there?
Yeah.
So for me, it's that focusing on trying to really up the calories and gain them. Like, you're going to gain body fat with that. And it's I feel comfortable being a bit leaner, and I enjoy being a bit leaner.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just that balance of doing it slowly and gradually, which I think like shows it can be done from my last DEXA scan that was done 6 years ago. Because if you look at the lean mass index, that's jumped up from 50th percentile to 70th. And like that's a pretty decent jump, and that's just slow, steady, consistent training, high protein. And I think it's more playing the long game instead of, because I wouldn't want to just up the calories and be like, I'm just going to try and go crazy for it. Because I can think that for the bone mineral density and think, oh, if I really up my calories, then surely that'll increase my. But it's kind of like finding that balance and thinking long game, 10 years time, these slow, steady, consistent focuses will make a difference.
Yeah, you should let that sink in as well. Like over the period of 4 years, you have got a significant amount leaner, and you have added lean muscle, and you haven't done it through bulking and cutting. You've stayed relatively lean. Like, that is the holy grail. Like, you want to stay lean, maybe even get leaner and put on muscle. Like, it's an incredibly hard thing to do.
Yeah, I think it's just about that consistency piece, though. So it's like, and it's a good point, and to talk about, because it's looking at it for the long game of, I'm doing this because I enjoy it and I want to see the difference in 5 years. So it was 6 years ago, but it's if you tell somebody it's going to take you 6 years and you can reduce your body fat percentage by 3%, whatever it may be, and increase but it's going to require you training 5 days a week consistently for 6 years and being fairly disciplined with your protein intake, say, like, will you do it? It's a big it's 6 years of consistency. So I think it shows that it can be done. There isn't a quick win for it, or there are, the quick, like the bodybuilding, the bulk, the cut, the bulk. I would hate doing that. Just the physical and emotional kind of like, it would just be horrendous. So it's that, knowing that you can actually do it just by being really consistent. It doesn't have to be all guns blazing. It's a slow, steady, consistent, track it every year, see how you go, make sure everything's on track. And doing these things may highlight some real anomalies, like the bone mineral for me, which is a lack of calcium. Like there could be other bits in there that your body fat percentage is not that high, but you've got high visceral fat, which means that maybe your body doesn't there could be just some real useful insights in there.
I like, this is me just completely making it up. Like you said at the beginning of this podcast, we're not doctors. We don't know what we're talking about. Yeah. I think there's something to the volume of calories that you're consuming that could be interesting to look at, because to hold sub 10% is quite an incredible feat. Again, I don't think people quite realize how hard it is to hold a sub 10% body fat, right? It's again, it's top 1%. And I've seen your Whoop activity as well. Your output is incredibly high. The amount of calories you burn are pretty high. You're very active in terms of your exercise. You're very active, just 3 kids running around doing stuff, etc. And I also know that when me and you were working together and we were cutting, you were on like 2,000 calories or something like that. I think that your body has adapted to being in a pretty decent deficit, or even in the most hopeful scenario, maintenance. And I actually realize you probably haven't appreciated how much that is the case. That's just my guess. And the reason I say that is, again, if you're under eating, you're much more likely to be, you're things like calcium and other things. You're more likely to be lacking some of those things. So I wonder whether you might find that the bone density stuff increases if you eat more and allow your body fat to probably get to 11 or 12%, which, by the way, is still lean 6 abs territory.
Yeah.
you just have to lose abs 7 and 8 to go there. But yeah, I think that there is something about that. It might be worth exploring like your maintenance in a bit more depth and just going, well, hold on a minute, like, maybe I'm not burning the candle at both ends, but there might be something to that very high output and not the potentially, and your input being quite low.
Maybe. I mean, I don't track my calories unless I'm doing a cut. So like I did with you, that was the only time that I say that I haven't been tracking them at all. And I kind of do it in my mind. I'm like, oh, where am I at? I reckon I'm.
It'd be interesting to see where they're at then. Why don't you track them and not change anything? Because, again, I have found the calories you burn on Whoop to be very, very accurate to what my maintenance is. And like ignore the Whoop calories. I have known that if I eat 2,400 calories and I do, and my exercise is as consistent as you get. 3 weight training sessions, which are typically the same. 1.5 hours of zone 2, 10k steps a day. The end. That's what I do every single week in, week out, without fail. Very consistent. And I know that eating 2,400 calories and doing that is maintenance, because my weight, even though it moves around a kilogram up and down over the last 6 weeks, it is still roughly where it was 6 weeks ago. So I'm very confident that's my maintenance. And it's not a coincidence that Whoop also tells me that on average, I have been burning 2350 for the last 6 weeks too. So I've found Whoop output to be very, very consistent with what my maintenance is. And I look at your Whoop and you're burning over 3,000 calories every day pretty easily.
Yeah, so here's
and
the
I
thing,
wonder whether if you found that you were eating 2,400, that's just something interesting to observe.
Yeah, but then my weight would be coming down as well, though. But I've gained weight since you and I did our little session before. So, and my weight generally always hovers between 67 and 68 kilos. So
I guess that's also the definition of maintenance as well, right?
It's like my weight is pretty much the same. So I'm eating it. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I'll check. I'm not sure if it's that. Like, because otherwise I'd be feeling weak and tired and I wouldn't be able to do my workout. Like the food wise, I think I'm getting enough.
I just wonder though whether your body, like over the last 10 or 15 years, has had to go, holy fuck, like what am I being asked to do? What am I being given? I've got to find a way to make this work. Like, no, I honestly think there might be something to that, right? In which case, like, if you loosen up a little bit and eat a bit more, you might find that your weight does not balloon. Okay, so think about this. When I was in a deficit, my body was like not acting well and staying at 75 kilograms. Like I didn't feel great. Like I looked a bit fragile. I caught sickness easily. Now I'm eating 500 calories more every single day, and my weight is the same.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't really make sense on the grand scheme of things, but there's something about my metabolism or the way that my body's worked, which has gone, that feels better to me. And
you know what?
It's strange I can maintain my body weight at 500 calories more and feel better. So there's
definitely something in it. I think I might just go have a tub of Ben and Jerry's now. That'll offset.
Do that. Or a Christmas pudding.
But I think this was, so I hope if people, like anyone listening, I think so. My mum was asking me about what I've been up to recently, and I told her about the DEXA scan. So I'll be like, Mum, go listen to this podcast if you want to find out more about it. So at least there'll be one listener. But other than that, I think if anyone is keen to get a DEXA, it is, I would highly recommend it. And hopefully this will help, in particular with like the video in the background, just around the key things to look out for.
Yeah, cool. And I'll stick some show notes to some of the stuff we talked about as well. It'd be helpful. Nice one. Good episode. Mate. Yeah. We'll be back hopefully next week with Rich.
Our episodes are better without Rich, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. Hopefully he'll like. So this will be the test, right? Does he actually listen to the episode that he's not 54. In to the end to hear that? And if he does, then we'll know about it.
Let's see.
All right, cool. Nice one. Good to chat.
Thanks, mate.
Have a good sleep as usual.
Cheers, mate.